In the crowded hallways of Lincoln High, the day started like any other. Students shuffled between classes, laughing, chatting, and trying to make it through another ordinary school day. Among them was a girl who stood out not because she was loud or flashy, but because of her quiet confidence. She carried herself with a sense of purpose that made people notice her even when she didn't say much. Her name wasn't important to most, but those who knew her called her Amara. Amara was 16 years old, in her junior year, and known for two things: her incredible sketches that often decorated the school bulletin boards and her ability to stay calm no matter what happened around her. She wasn't the type to get into drama or arguments. If anything, she preferred staying under the radar, focusing on her studies and her art. But today, fate had something else in store for her as she walked down the hallway with her arms full of books. Heading toward her next class, a group of 3 students blocked her path. They weren't strangers. They were familiar faces, kids who thought they ruled the school just because they played sports or came from wealthy families. One of them, a tall senior with an arrogant smirk, decided to have some fun at Amara's expense. Without warning, he stuck out his foot as she passed by. Amara stumbled forward, losing her balance completely. The books she'd been holding flew everywhere, scattering across the floor. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Then came the laughter, loud, mocking, and cruel. It echoed off the lockers, filling the hallway like a wave of noise. "Wow, clumsy much?" One of them jeered, while the others laughed harder. Some students stopped to watch, unsure whether to step in or keep moving. Others joined in the teasing, tossing out comments like "pick up your mess," or "maybe you should watch where you're going." But Amara didn't react the way they expected. Instead of yelling back or bursting into tears, she simply bent down and began picking up her books. Her movements were slow and deliberate, almost as if she was shutting out the chaos around her. There was no anger in her expression, no frustration, just a quiet focus. She didn't look at the bullies or respond to their taunts. To anyone watching, it might have seemed like she was letting them win. But deep inside, Amara felt something stir, a mix of sadness, disappointment, and a growing determination not to let them break her. The scene could have ended there, with Amara walking away unnoticed after gathering her things. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. Just as she stood up, brushing dust off her jeans, a new figure appeared on the scene. Officer Daniels, the school resource officer, arrived with his usual stern expression. He was a middle-aged man with a no-nonsense attitude, someone who prided himself on keeping order in the school. Unfortunately, he also had a reputation for jumping to conclusions, especially when it came to students of color. "What's going on here?" he barked, scanning the hallway. His eyes landed on Amara immediately. Without waiting for an explanation, he pointed at her. "You again? Why are you causing trouble in my hallways?" Amara blinked, confused. Trouble? She hadn't done anything wrong. But before she could explain, the officer stepped closer, his voice rising. "Don't ignore me when I'm talking to you," he snapped. "I've seen your kind before always. Stirring up problems." The accusation hit hard, though Amara didn't show it. She wasn't surprised. She'd heard similar words before, whispered behind her back or hidden beneath fake smiles. Still, hearing them said so openly stung more than she cared to admit. Around her, the crowd grew silent, watching intently. Phones were pulled out, recording every second. This wasn't just about Amara. Anymore, it was about everyone who had ever felt unfairly judged or dismissed. Officer Daniels reached for her arm, gripping it tightly. "Come with me," he ordered, clearly intending to take her to the principal's office or worse. But what happened next shocked everyone, including Amara herself. Without thinking, her body moved instinctively. Over the summer, she'd taken self-defense classes at a local community center. Encouraged by her mom to learn how to protect herself, those lessons came rushing back now. With fluid precision, she twisted her arm free from his grasp, stepping back quickly. Before anyone realized what was happening, she deftly removed the handcuffs from his belt and held them up, her face unreadable. For a split second, time seemed to stop. The hallway was utterly silent except for the faint hum of phone cameras recording. Officer Daniel stared at her, wide-eyed and speechless. Amara didn't say a word. She simply placed the handcuffs on the floor beside her and turned to walk away, leaving the stunned officer and the entire school in awe. By lunchtime, videos of the incident had gone viral. Social media exploded with reactions ranging from outrage over the officer's behavior to admiration for Amara's composure and skill. Everyone wanted to know more about the girl who had silently disarmed a police officer in front of dozens of witnesses. Little did they realize this was only the beginning of her story. The hallway fell eerily silent after Amara walked away, leaving behind a stunned Officer Daniels and a crowd of students frozen in disbelief. No one moved for what felt like an eternity. The sound of phones clicking and recording filled the air, as everyone tried to process what they had just witnessed. A girl quiet, unassuming, someone who rarely drew attention to herself, had just disarmed a school cop without saying a single word. It was the kind of moment that felt surreal, almost cinematic, but this wasn't a movie. This was real life. Officer Daniels stood there, his face flushed with embarrassment and anger. He looked down at the handcuffs lying on the floor where Amara had left them, then back at the students watching him intently. Some kids were whispering nervously, others were snickering under their breath, and a few clapped softly before realizing it might not be the best idea. The officer's authority, which he prided himself on so much, had been publicly challenged, and by a teenager, no less. "You think this is funny?" He barked suddenly, his voice booming through the hallway. His sharp tone snapped people out of their daze. Students quickly stuffed their phones into pockets or backpacks, pretending they hadn't been filming. But it was too late. Within minutes, clips of the incident were already being uploaded online, spreading faster than anyone could have imagined. Meanwhile, Amara kept walking. She didn't look back, didn't pause to see the reactions of her classmates or the officer she'd left behind. Her heart was pounding, adrenaline coursing through her veins, but outwardly she remained calm. Years of practicing self-control during difficult moments helped her keep her composure now. Still, inside, her mind raced. What had she done? Was she in trouble? Would the school punish her? And what about the bullies who had tripped her in the first place? Had anyone even noticed them anymore? As she turned the corner toward her locker, a group of students caught up with her. One of them, a boy with curly hair and glasses, tapped her shoulder hesitantly. "Hey," he said, his voice low but excited. "That was amazing." "Like, seriously, how did you do that?" Amara glanced at him, unsure how to respond. She shrugged slightly, keeping her answer brief. "I took a class," she murmured, as if that explained everything. "A class?" Another student chimed in, wide-eyed. "You mean like karate or something?" "Self-defense," Amara clarified, still fiddling with the lock on her locker. She didn't want to make a big deal out of what had happened. To her, it wasn't about showing off or proving a point. She'd acted purely out of instinct, protecting herself when she felt threatened. But to everyone else, it seemed like something far greater. Word of mouth traveled fast within the school. By the time lunch rolled around, nearly every student knew about the confrontation in the hallway. Some praised Amara for standing up to authority. Others debated whether she'd gone too far. In the cafeteria, tables buzzed with conversation. At one table, a group of seniors argued loudly. "She shouldn't have done that," one of them insisted, shaking his head. "No matter what, you don't disrespect a cop." "But did you see how he treated her?" Another countered, leaning forward passionately. "He grabbed her arm like she was some criminal. She was just defending herself." Nearby, a freshman girl whispered to her friends, "Do you think she'd get expelled?" The uncertainty hung heavy in the air. While some admired Amara's courage, others worried about the consequences she might face. After all, taking on a police officer, even unintentionally, wasn't something schools typically overlooked. By the end of the day, the story had spilled beyond the walls of Lincoln High. Parents picked up their kids from school, asking questions about the rumors they'd heard. Local news stations received tips about the viral video, and soon reporters began calling the school for comment. Social media exploded with hashtags like #StandWithHer and #Justice for the girl who fought back. Comment sections lit up with debates, opinions, and messages of support. At home, Amara's mother sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone with a mix of concern and disbelief. She'd seen parts of the video earlier that afternoon, forwarded by a neighbor who recognized her daughter. Now, as she watched clip after clip pop up online, her anxiety grew. When Amara finally walked through the door, her mom looked up, her expression torn between pride and worry. "What happened today?" she asked gently, gesturing for Amara to sit down. Amara sighed, setting her bag on the floor. For the first time since the incident, she allowed herself to feel the weight of everything that had transpired. Slowly, she recounted the events, the bullies, the officer, the handcuffs. Her mom listened quietly, nodding occasionally but mostly staying silent, until Amara finished. When she spoke, her voice was soft but firm. "Baby, I'm proud of you for standing your ground. But we need to think about what comes next. People are talking, and not all of them are going to be on your side." Amara nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. She hadn't meant to start a firestorm, but the reality was undeniable. Her actions had sparked something bigger than herself. As the evening wore on, calls started coming in from family members, friends, and even strangers offering words of encouragement. Others reached out with advice, urging Amara and her mom to seek legal counsel. Later that night, unable to sleep, Amara sat on her bed sketching in her notebook. Drawing always helped her clear her mind, and tonight she poured her emotions onto the page. Her pencil moved swiftly, creating images of strength and resilience. A young woman standing tall amidst chaos, surrounded by shadows but refusing to be swallowed by them. It was symbolic, she realized, of how she felt right now. Little did she know, this was only the beginning. The world outside her window was changing rapidly, and her quiet act of defiance would soon force her to step into a spotlight she never asked for. The next morning, the air at Lincoln High felt different. There was a tension in the hallways, an unspoken awareness that things had changed overnight. Students whispered as they passed each other, glancing toward Amara's usual spots: her locker, the art room, the quiet corner of the library where she often sketched during free periods. Everyone wanted to know, would she show up today? And if she did, what would happen next? Amara walked into school just like any other day, her backpack slung over one shoulder and her head held high. She knew people were watching her, but she didn't let it bother her. Years of dealing with sideways glances and muttered comments had taught her how to move through the world without letting others dictate her pace. Still, this time felt heavier. This wasn't just about a few rude remarks or awkward stares, it was about something much bigger. As soon as she stepped inside, a teacher approached her. "You're needed in the principal's office," he said, his tone neutral but firm. Amara nodded, not surprised. She'd been expecting this since last night when her mom warned her about the inevitable fallout. Taking a deep breath, she followed him down the familiar route to the administrative wing. When she entered the office, she found herself face to face with Principal Carter, Officer Daniels, and two unfamiliar adults, a lawyer and a representative from the school board. Her mom was already there, sitting stiffly in one of the chairs, clutching her purse tightly. The atmosphere was tense, almost suffocating. No one smiled or offered a kind word. Instead, all eyes were on Amara, waiting for her to speak. Principal Carter cleared his throat and began. "We've called you here today to discuss yesterday's incident." He paused, searching for the right words. "There are serious concerns about your behavior, young lady. Assaulting a law enforcement officer is no small matter." Amara blinked, taken aback by the accusation. Assault? That wasn't what had happened. She opened her mouth to explain, but her mom placed a gentle hand on her arm, signaling her to stay quiet. The lawyer sitting beside them leaned forward, addressing the group calmly. "Let's be clear," the lawyer said, his voice steady. "My client did not initiate this confrontation. She was grabbed forcefully by Officer Daniels after being falsely accused of disrupting the hallway. Her actions were purely defensive, a response to feeling unsafe." Officer Daniels shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his jaw tightening. "I was doing my job," he insisted, his tone defensive. "She shouldn't have resisted. It's disrespectful to authority." Respect. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Amara thought back to everything she'd endured, the bullying, the unfair assumptions, the dismissive attitudes. Respect went both ways, didn't it? But now wasn't the time to argue. She stayed silent, letting the adults hash it out while she focused on staying composed. The meeting dragged on, growing more heated as accusations flew back and forth. Principal Carter seemed caught between wanting to protect the school's reputation and acknowledging the obvious flaws in how the situation had been handled. At one point, he turned to Amara directly. "Do you understand why this is problematic?" he asked, his tone softer than before. "Even if you felt threatened, disarming an officer isn't acceptable. People are upset. Parents are calling. We need to resolve this quickly." Amara finally spoke, her voice quiet but clear. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," she said. "I just wanted to protect myself. I didn't ask for any of this." Her words landed heavily, breaking through some of the tension in the room. For a moment, everyone felt silent, considering the weight of what she'd said. Then the school board representative broke in, suggesting a compromise. "We'll put disciplinary action on hold pending further investigation," she announced. "But in the meantime, we expect cooperation from all parties involved." It wasn't exactly a victory, but it was enough for now. Amara left the office feeling drained but relieved that she hadn't been immediately suspended or expelled. Outside, reporters lingered near the school gates, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. Cameras flashed as she exited the building, flanked by her mom and the lawyer. They ushered her into a car quickly, shielding her from the chaos. Back home, the phone rang nonstop. Calls poured in from organizations offering support, civil rights groups, community activists, even local artists who admired her courage. Some invited her to speak at events or rallies, eager to amplify her story. Others simply wanted to express solidarity, telling her she wasn't alone. But amid the noise, Amara struggled to find peace. Late at night, after everyone else had gone to bed, she sat alone in her room, staring at the sketches she'd made earlier. One drawing stood out, a girl standing tall despite the storm raging around her. It reminded her of how she felt right now, caught in the middle of something far beyond her control. Yet determined to stay grounded, her mom knocked softly on the door before stepping inside. "Still awake?" she asked, sitting on the edge of Amara's bed. "Yeah," Amara replied, setting her sketchbook aside. "I can't stop thinking about everything. What if they decide to punish me anyway? What if this doesn't end?" Her mom sighed, reaching out to squeeze her hand. "We'll figure it out together, okay? You've already shown so much strength. Just take it one step at a time." Amara nodded, grateful for her mom's reassurance. But deep down, she knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The attention wasn't going away anytime soon, and neither were the questions about justice, accountability, and fairness. All she could do was keep moving forward, trusting that her quiet resilience would carry her through, and somewhere in the back of her mind, she wondered, could this moment become something more than just a personal battle? Could it spark change, not just for her, but for others who felt unseen and unheard? The days that followed felt like a whirlwind. Amara tried to return to her normal routine, but normal was no longer an option. Every corner of Lincoln High buzzed with whispers about her, and even teachers seemed unsure how to act around her. Some gave her sympathetic smiles in the hallways, while others avoided eye contact altogether. The attention was relentless, and it weighed on her more than she let on. Outside of school, things were just as chaotic. Social media had turned her into an overnight sensation or maybe a symbol. It depended on who you asked. Hashtags like #StandWithHer and #JusticeForTheGirl flooded Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Videos of the incident were viewed millions of times, dissected frame by frame. People debated whether Amara was a hero or if she'd crossed a line. News outlets ran stories with headlines like "Teen Disarms School Cop, Brave Act or Dangerous." Precedent? Comment sections exploded with opinions ranging from outrage over police misconduct to concerns about discipline in schools. Amara scrolled through some of it late at night when sleep wouldn't come. She saw messages of support people calling her courageous, saying she inspired them to stand up for themselves too. But there were also harsh comments accusing her of being reckless or disrespectful. One comment read, "She should have just apologized instead of making such a scene." Another said, "This is why kids these days have no respect." Reading those words stung, even though she told herself not to care. Her mom noticed the dark circles under her eyes and the way she picked at her food during meals. One evening, after finding Amara staring blankly at her phone, her mom gently took it from her hands. "You don't need to read all that," she said firmly. "None of it matters as much as what you know is true." Amara nodded but didn't respond. Deep down, she knew her mom was right. Still, it was hard to ignore the voices, both online and in real life, that kept telling her how she should feel, what she should say, and who she should be. A week later, the school announced a special assembly. Principal Carter called it a community conversation designed to address bullying, racial bias, and respect within the school environment. Officially, it wasn't about Amara. Unofficially, everyone knew exactly why it was happening. When the day arrived, the auditorium was packed. Students filed in reluctantly, many rolling their eyes or grumbling about having to attend yet another boring school event. Teachers sat along the walls, watching silently. Reporters weren't allowed inside, but cameras lingered outside, hoping to catch reactions afterward. Principal Carter stepped onto the stage first, looking nervous. He thanked everyone for coming and gave a vague speech about fostering kindness and understanding. Then he introduced the guest speaker, a local activist known for advocating against systemic injustice. The crowd perked up slightly. This part might actually be interesting. Finally, it was time for the last speaker. Principal Carter hesitated before announcing, "We're honored to have one of our own students share her thoughts today. She's been through a lot recently, and I think we can all learn something from her perspective." The room went silent as Amara walked onto the stage. She hadn't planned to speak. She'd been asked only the night before, but her mom encouraged her to take the opportunity. If you don't tell your story, her mom had said, someone else will do it for you. Standing behind the microphone, Amara scanned the sea of faces staring back at her. Some looked curious, others bored, and a few downright hostile. Her heart raced, but she reminded herself why she was here. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every student who'd ever felt dismissed, judged, or pushed aside. "Hi," she began softly, gripping the sides of the podium. "I'm not really used to talking in front of big groups, so bear with me." A ripple of laughter spread through the audience, easing the tension slightly. "For the past couple of weeks," she continued, "a lot of people have been asking me questions. They want to know why I did what I did, or if I regret it, or what message I'm trying to send. The truth is, I didn't do any of this to make a statement. I just wanted to protect myself." She paused, letting the words sink in. "But now that it's happened, I realize something important. What happened to me isn't just about me. It's about all of us, the way we treat each other, the assumptions we make, and the systems that shape our lives. When someone trips you in the hallway and laughs about it, that's not okay. When an authority figure accuses you without listening, that's not okay either. And when we stay silent because we're afraid of rocking the boat, that's not okay either." Her voice grew stronger as she spoke, resonating with emotion. "I'm not saying I handled everything perfectly. Maybe I could have done things differently. But what I do know is that everyone deserves to feel safe, not just physically, but emotionally too. Everyone deserves to be heard." By the end of her speech, the room was completely silent. No one clapped immediately, they were too stunned. Then, slowly, a few students stood up, followed by more until nearly half the auditorium was on its feet. Teachers wiped away tears, and even Principal Carter looked moved. Afterward, reporters swarmed the school again, desperate for sound bites. Amara declined interviews, choosing instead to focus on finishing her schoolwork and spending time with her family. The attention eventually died down, though reminders of it lingered. Students started approaching her between classes, thanking her for speaking up. Some admitted they'd never realized how small actions like laughing at a bully's joke could add up to bigger problems. Even Officer Daniels seemed different. He avoided eye contact with Amara in the hallways, his usual swagger replaced by a quiet unease. Rumors circulated that he'd been placed on leave pending an investigation, though nothing official was confirmed. Through it all, Amara stayed grounded. She returned to her art, pouring her emotions into sketches that captured resilience, hope, and strength. One piece, a mural she painted for the school's annual art showcase, became particularly popular. Titled "Rising Above," it depicted a young girl standing tall amidst swirling winds. Her expression calm yet determined. As graduation approached, Amara reflected on everything she'd been through. She hadn't set out to change the world, but in her own small way, she'd sparked conversations that mattered. More importantly, she discovered a kind of courage she didn't know she had. And as she walked across the stage to receive her diploma, the cheers from her classmates were louder than ever, a reminder that sometimes standing up for yourself can inspire others to do the same. Graduation day at Lincoln High arrived with a mix of excitement and nostalgia. The sun shone brightly, casting golden light over the football field where rows of folding chairs had been set up for students, families, and teachers. Balloons swayed gently in the breeze, and upbeat music played softly in the background as everyone took their seats. For Amara, it was surreal. She'd spent so much of her high school journey feeling invisible, or worse, judged, but today felt different. Today, she wasn't just another face in the crowd. As she sat among her classmates, wearing her cap and gown, she couldn't help but think about how far she'd come. Just a few months ago, she'd been the girl quietly picking up books in the hallway after being tripped by bullies. Now she was someone people recognized, respected, and even admired. It wasn't fame she sought, it was understanding, fairness, and a chance to be heard. And somehow, through all the chaos, she'd found that. When the ceremony began, Principal Carter stepped up to the podium to deliver his annual speech. He talked about resilience, growth, and the challenges this year's seniors had faced. Then, toward the end, he paused and looked directly at Amara. "This class has shown us what it means to rise above," he said, his voice steady. "You've proven that courage doesn't always look like loud declarations. It can also mean standing firm in your truth, even when it's hard." The audience erupted into applause, and Amara felt her cheeks flush. She wasn't used to being singled out, especially not by authority figures who once seemed unwilling to see her side of things. But here they were, acknowledging her role in sparking change, not just within the school, but in the broader community. After the speeches came the part everyone had been waiting for, handing out diplomas. When Amara's name was called, she stood up and walked across the stage, her footsteps echoing against the pavement. As she approached the principal, she noticed something unexpected. He smiled warmly and held out his hand. Not just for a handshake, but as if to say, "Thank you." She shook it briefly, then accepted her diploma, turning to face the cheering crowd. Her mom sat near the front row, tears streaming down her face as she clapped harder than anyone else. Nearby, some of Amara's classmates held up signs that read, "We stand with you," and "Proud of you." It was overwhelming, but in the best possible way. Back in her seat, Amara let out a quiet sigh of relief. She'd done it. All those years of working hard, staying focused, and navigating obstacles had paid off. But more than the diploma itself, she felt proud of the person she'd become, someone who could handle adversity without losing herself in the process. The weeks following graduation were a blur of goodbyes and new beginnings. Friends promised to stay in touch, though everyone knew life would pull them in different directions. Some planned to attend college, others headed straight into jobs or travel. Amara decided to take a gap year. She wanted time to reflect, create art, and figure out exactly what she wanted next. Her dream of becoming an animator still burned brightly, but she didn't feel rushed to chase it. Life had taught her the value of patience. During her gap year, Amara stayed involved in her community. She volunteered at the same self-defense classes that had given her the skills to protect herself back in the hallway incident. Teaching younger kids how to stand strong made her realize how much she'd grown since taking those classes herself. She also started speaking at local events about her experience, not because she craved attention, but because she believed sharing her story might help others find their voice too. One evening, while scrolling through social media, she stumbled upon a video someone had posted of her graduation speech. Comments poured in from strangers thanking her for inspiring them to speak up when they felt unheard. One comment stood out. "I saw your story right when I needed it most. Because of you, I finally told my parents about the bullying I've been dealing with at school. Thank you for showing me it's okay to fight back, not with anger, but with strength." Reading that message brought tears to her eyes. This was why she kept going to remind people they weren't alone, no matter how tough things got. Months later, Amara received an email from a filmmaker who'd seen her mural, Rising Above. They wanted to feature it in a documentary about young artists using their talents to drive social change. At first, Amara hesitated. Being in the spotlight again felt intimidating, especially after everything she'd already been through. But ultimately, she agreed, not for herself, but for the message behind the artwork. If her story could inspire even one person to keep fighting, it would be worth it. Filming took place over several weeks, during which Amara shared parts of her journey with the crew. They asked tough questions about fear, doubt, and hope, and she answered honestly. By the time the project wrapped, she realized something important. Telling her story didn't make her vulnerable, it made her powerful. Each retelling helped her heal, piece by piece. When the documentary premiered, it received widespread praise. Critics called it a moving portrait of resilience, highlighting Amara's ability to turn pain into purpose. Schools across the country began showing it to students, sparking conversations about bullying, respect, and accountability. Teachers reached out to thank her for giving them tools to address these issues in their classrooms. Years passed, and Amara eventually pursued her dream of becoming an animator. Her work often reflected themes of empowerment, justice, and the beauty of finding strength in adversity. One of her short films, a collaboration with the same filmmaker who'd featured her mural, won awards at international festivals. Film followed a young girl navigating a world that constantly tried to push her down, only to discover her own power along the way. Audiences connected deeply with it, many saying it mirrored their own struggles. Through it all, Amara remained humble. She never forgot where she came from, the quiet halls of Lincoln High, the laughter of bullies, the grip of an officer's hand, and the courage it took to rise above it all. Those moments shaped her, teaching her lessons she carried for the rest of her life. One afternoon, while visiting her old high school to give a talk, she walked through the same hallway where it had all begun. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the lockers and floors. A group of students stopped to greet her, asking for advice on handling difficult situations. Amara smiled, remembering how lonely she'd once felt in this very spot. "Remember this," she told them, her voice soft but firm. "No matter what happens, you have the power to decide how you respond. Don't let anyone take that away from you." As she left the building, she glanced back one last time. The hallway looked smaller now, less intimidating. In its place stood a memory, a reminder of how far she'd come and how much farther she could go. And with that, Amara stepped into the future, ready to continue creating, inspiring, and rising above.